Hey there, I'm Dave, here to talk about, very exciting, to announce actually, the brand new Dave's Picks Volume 27. If you're watching this, you might already have heard that Dave's Picks 27 is out. What I would suggest you do, because the last couple of Dave's Picks have sold out in, I don't know if it's hours or if it's minutes, I don't know, but it's quickly, so I would put this on pause and go and order it, because they do sell out quickly. So if you're seeing this video and you do want this, so a little bit about the show. Well, a little bit about a lot of things. So a lot of things about little things. So we finally entered the realm of the mid-1980s with the Dave's Picks series. It took us a while. There's a lot of reasons for that. It's not really even so much performance quality. It's tape availability. Are there board tapes? Are the tapes okay? So anyhow, without further ado, the big announcement, of course, is that the new Dave's Picks is from September 2nd, 1983 in Boise, Idaho at BSU Pavilion, Boise State University Pavilion in Boise, Idaho. I've only been to Idaho a couple of times. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the interstates, either 80 or 90 or maybe 70, I don't know, crosses through the Panhandle, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, because I remember when I used to drive out west to go see the Grateful Dead in 89, 90, did I go? Yeah, maybe 91. I would drive through Coeur d'Alene. So Idaho, an absolutely beautiful state up in the kind of Pacific Northwest. I don't know if you'd actually call it that, but nonetheless, this is the Grateful Dead's only performance ever in the state of Idaho, and they brought their A game. It was a very interesting little tour. It started right towards the end of August with some shows in Portland and Seattle and Eugene, and then it hit Boise State University, Park City, Red Rocks. It ended with a couple shows, Santa Fe. So some really good music on this tour and some really great sounding tapes. So this was a pick that was kind of a long time coming. We've had our ears on this era for a long time. And to go back to what I said a couple minutes ago about tape availability, there are a lot of shows from this era, from 81 through 85, 87 even, where we know there's great shows, shows that we love as much as you do, and we just don't have tapes. Or the tapes we have are, I don't want to say unreleasable, but they've been examined, they've been checked out by Jeffrey, an engineer, one of the best engineers in the business. As for archival CD mastering, I can't think of anybody better in this business than Jeffrey Norman, and there's just problems with them. And the problems can be, think of SPAC in Harrisburg in 1983, June. Widely considered some of the best shows of the early to mid 80s. There's no board tapes, so we can't release those ones. We don't have the audience tapes in our vault, and we generally aim for the board tapes in our releases. Then there are shows, I can think of at least two examples where I've put forth shows, one from 1981, I won't tell you which one because maybe someday we'll find a better copy, and one from 1982. And I can't even remember, I think one of them was a road trip, so one of them was one of the early Dave's Picks, where Jeffrey checked them out and there were just major problems, out of phase. There's things I can hear, like I can listen to a tape that's a great show, but there's a missing rhythm guitar, so there's no Bob Weir rhythm guitar. The bass is ridiculously low, whatever the case is. So it is a kind of, I don't want to say a common case, but there are several great shows that if the tapes were better, I think would have been released by now from this era. Anyhow, back to our Boise show. So the Dead are playing pretty well through the summer of 83. Obviously, they're playing really well. 83 is one of these years where the consistency might not be there, but when they were on, I mean consistency compared to, let's say, 1977, 79, where virtually every night was pretty darn special. 83 wasn't necessarily like that, but when they were on, they were as good as any other night in Grateful Dead history. And that's what I love about the Dead, is that when within any era you can hear some phenomenal music, and the Boise show is exactly that. And when you look at this era, it's a little easier than any other era to define it as every show being three parts. The first set is one block, the pre-drums portion being another, and then the portion that came after Space and the encore being another. And there are quite a few shows where they've got a magnificent first set, and the second set doesn't quite hold it up. There's one show I have in mind from 1984 that I can think of that, where, and I can think of one from 1980, where the first sets are spectacular, but the second sets don't quite hold up to what the first set was. Or you have a pre-drum sequence, let's say a Scarlet Fire, Sailor, Saint, Terrapin, whatever it is, that's just the best versions of those 5 songs ever played, but the post-drum sequence isn't very good. It's like they kind of ran out of steam in that first portion, and the first set might not be good. So there's a lot of shows like that. Boise isn't one of those. Boise's a show from the first notes of the first song, which we'll get to in a second, right to the encore of It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. The band is on fire, they're engaged, they're having fun. And I'll tell you, there's one little interesting thing that, to me, it's those little moments that show how engaged in that moment the Dead were. You can listen to it with headphones. When they're taking their break between the last song, Sugar Magnolia, and the first song, in the encore, It's All Over Now, Baby Blue, you hear Mickey yell out, Broke Down Palace? And the fact that they were so engaged that the drummers are calling possible encore possibilities, I love that. I love that the drummers were so engaged that by the end of the show, that they're calling the encore. Jerry overruled them, so they have a healthy argument after a 3.5-hour show. I just love that. So it's these little moments that I think really indicate, all the way from the beginning. Actually, that reminds me, the beginning of the show, if you haven't heard it, you'll hear it when your Dave's Picks 27 arrives. But Phil does a really hilarious introduction to the show. He says something. And remember, this is a time when Phil didn't have a vocal mic. He wasn't really singing again until '84. So it's an interesting time for Phil to have this introduction. I don't know whose mic he used. I'm guessing he went up to Bobby's mic. But it's really funny stuff. So we've got this great Phil introduction. And then the first song of the first set, Wang Dang Doodle. And that in itself is odd enough. You know, the Dead did not open shows with Wang Dang Doodle. This is only the second ever version of Wang Dang Doodle. They debuted it a week earlier in Portland, Oregon. They came out of space, I think it was Truckin', Wang Dang Doodle. And that one is actually a surprisingly really good, I don't mean surprising like that Portland show wasn't any good, but usually a debut of a song like this, a bluesy song that's an old standard, it might not have had that kind of power, but the one in Portland is actually really good. This one in Boise is actually much better. They feel like they own it. Like when I hear other versions of Wang Dang Doodle by old blues musicians, they don't hold up to what the Dead turned that song into. And that goes for a lot of Dead. That's to me, of course. But a lot of Dead songs are like that, where the Dead made it their own. And from the first notes into Jerry's raunchy solos on this, and Bobby growling out the vocals, and Jerry too, the great Wang Dang Doodle. Really, what a way to open the show. Like that, to me, I remember having an audience tape of this show 32 years ago, maybe in 1985, 86, I had an audience tape. And I remember hearing this Wang Dang Doodle, and even then, they played it a couple times on this tour, a few times. 3, maybe 4, and they're all really good, but this one to me is the one, the definitive early version of Wang Dang Doodle. And then they go into a more traditional show opener with Jackstraw, really great Jackstraw. So the first set, kind of a standard era for the Dead. Now it's interesting, the Dead at this time, 83, they had about 6 new songs that they debuted within the last year, from August of 82 through early 83. Touch of Grey, Throwing Stones, West LA Fadeaway, Keep Your Day Job, My Brother Esau, Hell in a Bucket. So they debuted a lot of new original songs. This show only has one of them. So the first set is kind of a throwback to old school Dead. And to me, there's several highlights in this show. The Minglewood Blues, really wonderful. The Brown Eyed Women, love this Brown Eyed Women. They hit the bridge on it just perfectly. But it's the trio of songs that ended the first set that, to me, really indicate that here we are about an hour into the set, or 45 minutes by the time they start this trio of songs. The band is on fire. Big Railroad Blues, to me, the best version from this era. And that's saying a lot. I love Big Railroad Blues from the early, mid-'80s. They just love playing the heck out of it. Kind of a Cumberland Blues-esque kind of thing in terms of the pace with which they played it. So great Big Railroad Blues. A beautiful Looks Like Rain that's got the dynamics you want from Looks Like Rain. It's got the incredible quiet parts all the way up to the bigger, louder crescendos with the drummers doing their thing and Jerry doing these great solos and Bobby screaming, fully engaged in that moment. And then Deal. I mean, I could run it up against other times. I think it's the longest deal that I know of. Comes close to about 10 minutes long. The solo, and it's not 10 minutes because they mess it up and they had to redo something. It's 10 minutes because the guitar solo at the end, they didn't want this thing to end, and it just kept going and going and getting bigger and bigger. Reminds me a little bit of the one from Alpine in '89 that closed the first set of the Downhill From Here DVD. It's a really spectacular deal on this Boise show. And so they end the first set, crazy. Are they going to keep the momentum up for the second set? They not only keep it up, they far surpass it. They open with Help Slip Franklin's, which remember had been brought back into the repertoire in early 1983. I guess in the spring of '83 it had been brought back after a 6-year hiatus. They dropped it in the fall of '77. 6 years later they bring it back and they do this incredible Help Slip Franklin's. They did it, I think, 3 times on this tour. And each one is, I think, great. And all 3 parts of this one. Now, I'll say this. Jerry does forget a couple words or kind of mess up the verses of Help on the Way a little bit. But who cares, really, when he's that focused on things, when he's playing so well, and when he is singing, he's not mumbling by any means. He is owning those lines. He's singing his heart out on the whole show, not just Help on the Way. So the Help on the Way, excellent. The Slipknot, my favorite Slipknot from 1983 to the end, to 1995. Some of the 1976, 77 versions I do really like, but for the later versions, this is my favorite version of Slipknot. It is perfectly played. It is incredibly, it is cohesive. It is an incredibly complex piece of music, but they hit all the marks, and then as they head towards Franklin's Tower, they hit the marks perfectly, and they come out of Slipknot and play one of the coolest, most melodic versions of Franklin's Tower with a lot of cool stuff going on in and out of Franklin's Tower. The solos have these extra little melodic moments, and they just play their hearts out on this Franklin's Tower. Just really, it's one of my favorite versions of Help Slip Franklin's I've ever heard, and that does go for 77. The Slipknot, which I love, again, it's my favorite later version, 83 onward version. There's a couple in 77. I'm kind of looking at U5 977 and a couple others. A great one on 1011 77. But just a great Help Slip Franklin's. Just it really indicates, okay, they completely left nothing on the table or on the stage for the first set. They rested up nicely for the second set with this great Help Slip Franklin's. Followed that up with a monster Estimated Eyes, and the jam on it, both the guitar solo jam and then the outro jam as it headed towards Eyes of the World. And then Eyes of the World, beautiful. It's not that speedy 6-minute version that was played a bit in '83. Got a little more prevalent, and by '86, '87, there were seriously 6-7 minute versions of Eyes of the World. This isn't one of them. It's got a nice pace, nice tempo, and they're playing it really well. Now, at the end of it, Jerry and Phil, I guess, leave the stage, and Bobby and Brent stay out, which was somewhat common at the time with the drummers. And the 4 of them do this little jam. Forget it. It's honestly, one of my favorite things of this whole show is this little 3 or 4 minute jam, and it is absolutely wonderful. It's again, it's Bobby and Brent doing this, again, completely improvised piece of music, and with the drummers, and I love these jams because the drummers are getting a little antsy, it sounds like to me, because they want to go into drums, but they're also having a really good time with Brent and Bobby. So you get this wonderful jam. It's only about 3 or 4 minutes. Goes into drums, really powerful drums, shaking drums. Short, maybe, I don't know, 6-7 minutes or something. It goes into Space. Now Space, I don't know why, but I know some people kind of skip over it or maybe might not pay too close attention to Space, and I don't get it, because to me, that's the moment in any Grateful Dead show where Jerry and Bobby and Phil, and sometimes the drummers will stay out, and sometimes Brent will come out. That's when they're truly improvising. Not to say they're not improvising during China Ride or Help Slip Franklin's or the jam out of Esmond, but that's a structured piece of music. Space is when they truly get to improvise, make up music, they're on the spot, anything they want, with any sound effects they have at their disposal. This Space is Bob and Jerry doing one of the most beautiful melodic duets you're ever going to hear, where Bobby's playing this beautiful melody, he's playing this incredible little chord structure on the rhythm guitar, and Jerry is playing over it. It is, seriously, it's a song in itself, as Space always is, but this one in particular, I love this version of Space. This was when I was really paying a lot of attention to this show, and I worked on this show with a really good friend of mine for about 5 or 6 months. We worked on this one really hard to make sure we had the right one. We're heading into the mid-80s. We want to make sure we've got the absolute right perfect show, and we're confident that we do, which isn't to say there's not other 83 shows that aren't as good or that won't come out. They will, but this is the one for now, and it's really hot. So this beautiful Space, which I kept going back to on my listens, it goes into Throwing Stones. And this is the older, a little slightly more chaotic version of Throwing Stones. By 85, even 84, it had really settled into the Throwing Stones that would be defined by the version on In the Dark, where every part was a structure. The jam on this, the guitar solo jam, it gets a little chaotic, and I love it. It's they almost, on the landing, I always call it the landing, when they come back in after a big guitar solo or a big jam, when they come back into the song structure, the landing, they nail it. They kind of, it almost comes in on a bumpy landing, but then on a good night, the Grateful Dead could always fix those landings perfectly, and that's what happens here. Great Throwing Stones with a little bit of an alternate lyric, which I happen to love. I think I named the notes I wrote for the Dave's Picks 27 in the CD booklet after what this, my old favorite lyric was from Throwing Stones that they dropped shortly after. If you know Throwing Stones from 82, 83, you'll know the line I'm talking about. And then it goes into a ripping Going Down the Road Feeling Bad. Beautiful Black Peter, the bridge on Black Peter. I'm telling you, Jerry could write a bridge. You know, I think of a song like Brown Eyed Women, He's Gone, Ramble on Rose, Black Peter, Wharf Rat. Stella Blue, Jerry could really write a bridge, like really. No, I mean, to me, some of my favorite Garcia Hunter songs are the ones where the bridge is where it's at. And I think the Dead, all of them, their music has incredible bridges, which takes a great song into the realm of a masterpiece, and many of them. So the Black Peter then goes into Sugar Mag, and it's an interesting Sugar Mag because then there's a few really good ones in 83. We talked about some of the June material. There's a great one, you know the one I'm talking about. But Sugar Mag is a song that oftentimes, to my ears, it's almost like, okay, the show's over, let's rock out with a big hit. And they just, I don't want to say going through the motions. This is not one of those going through the motions versions. This is one where they just don't want this show to end. You know, they got curfews. They're playing a university campus. They have to end the show. So they do this wonderful Sugar Mag, my favorite Sugar Mag from the fall of 83. Really, it's like a holy crap, that's a really good Sugar Mag. And then again, they encore, as I said earlier, with It's All Over Now, Baby Blues. So there's your run through on the new Dave's Picks 27. I'm extremely excited about this one. Sorry it took so long for those who love this era. I love this era too. It's hard to find that perfect show to get out. There are more, and we'll get them out. And you got my word on that. I just, it's a little fewer and farther between than some of the shows where every night is consistently great on a performance level, and every night is consistently great on a recording level. And we have the recordings. It's unfortunately not like that in 83. We're kind of facing three things: 84, 85, 86, 87, 81, 82, all that stuff. The consistency of greatness of the performances isn't quite there. When they are great, they're great. The tape quality, either there's only audience tapes, which means we don't have a board tape at all, or there's an instrument missing in it, or it might be out of phase. So there is that problem too. So, but we will get some more out. I don't know when. The next one probably won't be from the 80s. This one is, and that's pretty exciting. So go to dead.net. They sell out quickly. I think, like I say, the last one sold out in minutes. How long? I mean, I might be wrong here, but it might have been 45 minutes. So if you are watching this, I would shut this off now. I would have shut it off a long time ago. I would shut this off now and go and buy it because it is really good. It sounds great. It's from a cassette master. We had a PCM, but it was an audience recording on the PCM, but we had the board tape for the cassette. So Jeffrey used the cassette and it sounds terrific. Jeffrey, you know, I've talked about this before. I know Jeffrey's really enjoying a show when in the middle of mastering, he's constantly sending me text messages or emails. And this one, he kept saying, man, we really found a great 83 show. He was surprised because it's not because he didn't know that they were out there. It's just, it's been so long since we've done one. I think he was surprised. He's like, shit, this is really good. And I agree. But he also kept saying how great the tape sounded. He goes, we also got lucky that there's a great sounding tape, which I also agree with. Full mix, and it doesn't take long for the mix to get going. You know, you think of some shows from 73, 74, where it takes quite a while for the mix to get going. You know, Promised Land from a show from 73. You know the ones, they're often missing a lot of the best music. So for the first couple minutes, as the mix gets set, this one from the beginning, the mix is good. By the middle of the first set, it is dialed in perfectly. You get big fill sounds. Bobby sounds great on the rhythm guitar. Brent on the keyboards, terrific. Jerry sounds great right down the middle, and the drummers sound really, really good. Both of them had good stereo separation on this one. It's a really good sounding show. And Jerry's voice sounds great. Bobby sounds amazing. Brent's beautiful, sweet harmonies, good stuff. So, check it out, Dave's Picks 27. Thank you for bearing with me. It's a beautiful day. So, oh, there's a big boat back there. See that? I don't know if you can see it, but there's a big container ship. So thank you for bearing with me, and we'll be back for the next Dave's Picks video. I don't know when that'll be, a couple months, 3 months maybe, but we might have some other announcements sooner or later. I don't know. We usually do, but if we do them, I'll do them by video. Again, thanks a lot. Dave's Picks 27, Boise State University, September 3rd, 1983, the Grateful Dead's only performance ever in the great state of Idaho. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you around.